Hi there. Haven't done a teaching video for a little while and going to do one right now. This is a look at the Statistics Act in Canada. We're in the middle of doing a Canada-wide census, and there's been lots of questions from people with regards to, is it mandatory, is it voluntary, is it partially mandatory, is it partially voluntary? There was a lot of public relations campaigning when it was first coming out that thank goodness that it was now mandatory again, and there was people had to fill it out, otherwise they were going to get fined or imprisoned, which was the case, again, public relations wise for many years, and then that was apparently dropped, that there was a potential prison sentence for not filling out the census, and then with this year's census, they were all celebrating, well, not all of them, a number of people who were interested in the results of the census, that it was now mandatory again, so they'd get more and better results, etc. Well, it's, again, just public relations, and it's not necessarily true, especially if you go and you read the act for it yourself. This is off of the Department of Justice website, and one of the things to know about the statistics is that these are being collected and they are being sold. They're being marketed. They are taking your private personal information and they are selling it on the commercial market and making millions and millions of dollars by selling this information. They also use it for other purposes to help determine things for the public good, etc. But it is a commercial enterprise that they are collecting and selling and sharing this information. So let's have a look. So this is to the Statistics Canada, an act respecting statistics of Canada. Good, there we go. Interpretation, I'm just going to point out a couple of the big issues to begin with, and then I'll go back through it again and cover some smaller tidbits which I find interesting as to how they structure the game with this act, and ultimately it's a model for almost any other act. So the definition section is usually at the beginning of most acts, sometimes they're at the end. So respondent means a person in respect of whom or in respect of whose activities any report or information is sought or provided pursuant to this act. So just by them asking you for it, you're considered a respondent, and they're talking again about a person, whatever that is. Statistics of Canada, there shall continue to be a Statistics Bureau under the Minister to be known as Statistics Canada, the duties of which are to A, to collect. Now notice the word to collect. Compile, analyze, abstract, publish statistical information. So they're talking specifically here about statistical information. Okay? Because the term collect is related to statistical information. You'll notice here that they also have to collaborate with other departments in that collection. And then C here is to take the census of population of Canada and the census of agriculture in Canada as provided in this act. So A is to collect, C is to take. And you'll notice that these two terms are used throughout the act. And whenever they're talking census, it's about taking a census. Whenever they're talking about other information statistically, they're talking about collecting. And that will become more valuable to know as we get through this. Generally, to promote and develop integrated social and economic statistics pertaining to whole of Canada and to each of the provinces thereof, and to coordinate plans for the integration of those statistics. So again, this is important to note that the provinces are unique sovereign entities from Canada. Canada is a general federal sphere and is a separate entity, legally speaking, from Canada. So it's to keep in mind, in the US, same deal with feds versus the states. So basically, any act sets up the offices of who's in it, how they have to operate, and so on. And I just wanted to point this out quickly. Again, they have oaths as well. Oaths are important to everything, and they're very serious. If you actually enforce them, you'll find out many of them are not done. And the other thing is that an oath has a specific process. Once it's taken, the oath shall be taken before such person authorized and returned and recorded in such manner as the minister may direct. So there's a specific process once an oath is done as to where it's supposed to go and how it's supposed to be stored. Again, that's for any oath. Now here we come to a big piece. Rules and instructions. The minister may, by order, prescribe such rules and instructions, schedules, and forms as the minister deems required for conducting the work and business of Statistics Canada, the work and business, the collecting, there's that word collecting, compiling and publishing of statistics. Collecting is related to statistics, and other information, whatever that may be, and the taking of any census authorized by the Act. So you have three different elements within this as to what they're authorized to do. They're collecting statistics and other information, and the taking of any census. So those are separate, three separate things. They're not just the census is everything. The census is separate from the statistics and the other information. Voluntary surveys is where we get into the other information probably. The minister may, by order, authorize the obtaining for a particular purpose, whatever that is, of information. Information is not census. Census and information are distinctly separated. Other information and the taking of census, other than the information for a census of population or agriculture. So on a voluntary basis, and this is the trick and the trap, they may authorize the obtaining of information other than the census on a voluntary basis. So that implies that the census is mandatory, which is the population and agriculture questions, and any other information is voluntary. But where such information, the voluntary information, Section 31 does not apply in respect of a refusal or neglect to furnish the information. Section 31 is the punishment section. If you don't provide them the information they request, you can be punished. So this section here is the actual separation of the census of population and agriculture from all of the information that is on the form. My understanding and interpretation is that on the form, whether it's the short form or the long form, the only questions that you are required mandatorily and subject to penalty if you don't provide it is the census of population or agriculture. So for anybody not agricultural, it's just no. I think the answer is no for agriculture, whatever it is. And then how many people live in the house? No names, no phone numbers, no other information. It's strictly a head count. The definition, technical definition of census is a head count. So there's no personal information related to the people. It's only how many people. That is what a census is. So this here creates the permission for them while they are collecting the census, the head count, to provide other questions on other information that are voluntary for the census, for the respondents to provide answers to, and failing to provide the answers to any question other than the census of population or agriculture, failing to provide those question answers, Section 31 does not apply, and we'll skip to 31 in a moment. So that is the key section. What is that? That's Section 8 of the Statistics Act. And I'm just going to skip down here to the main one again. Population census and agricultural census. You'll notice that there's a section. These headers are not part of the Act. They help you read through an Act. And there's another section on general statistics. Again, there's a separation distinct between a census and other questions. So there's two forms of census. There's the population census. A census of population of Canada shall be taken by Statistics Canada in the month of June, etc. So this is their requirement to do so. And an agricultural census shall be taken by Statistics Canada. The census questions can be prescribed by the Governor and Council. So that's your census. This is the census. That's it. Anything other than this is general statistics. All right. Section 22, without limiting the duties of Statistics Canada under Section 3, which if we skip back up to Section 3 is these options here: to collect statistical information, to take a census, and the other duties as well. So again, the idea is that those are separate concepts. Here we go. And they're listed again. So this is their authorization. They're allowed to ask all the questions they put on the form because this is in the Act. Otherwise, they could not. They have to get permission to ask you about statistical information. And it's all voluntary based on the previous section we just looked at. And you'll notice that population and agriculture are first and second because those are the initial duty of the Statistics Act, and then everything else is all the other things they get permission to ask about. And if you have a look here at the form's statistical data, again, which is not the census portion, it's the other portion, shall answer the inquiries thereon and return the form and answer statistics are properly certified as accurate. So once you fill out any information on the census, you're certifying that all those other answers are accurate. And there's a liability for you failing to provide accurate information. And just because, it's good to know, they also get permission to get income tax information, customs information, criminal statistics information. And here's the punishment section. Section 31 of the Act. So every person who with a lawful excuse refuses or neglects to answer or willfully answers falsely any question requisite. Requisite means required, mandatory. Okay? So if you neglect to fill out how many people in the house, or you put the wrong number down of how many people in the house, then you have provided false information. And B, neglects to furnish information to the best of his knowledge that the person has been required to fill in. Required to. What's required? What's voluntary? And again, if the census is mandatory, then it's all required to be filled in. So again, there's this distinction between what is mandatory and what is voluntary. And so for every refusal or neglect or false answer or deception is guilty of an offense. And it's a fine or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 3 months or both. So once you provide any information on the form other than the agricultural answer and the census number of people in the house, you can fall into this trap of not answering correctly or completely all the other questions. So if you fill out, if there's 30 questions and you fill out 28 of them, you have neglected to answer or refuse to answer 2 of the 28. Now you fall into this particular offense because you provided most of it but not all of it, or you provide false information on 1 or more of the questions. So by filling out anything other than the mandatory portion, you actually fall under this particular section with regards to any potential punishment. And there is also, if you have not completed it as far as they're concerned, many people have been talking to me about the fact that they provided the agriculture and the census question and they're getting harassed and hounded by census door knockers or phone calls. And the idea is, again, they want you to fill out the whole form. They want you to think the entire thing and every question is mandatory when it does not appear to be so if you actually read the Act. So they leave you a notice. They are, as far as they're concerned, providing you with a legal notice that creates a liability for you refusing or neglecting to fill out the form and can proceed to any form of prosecution from that. So let's look at some of the little tidbits here. So the bottom line is that it appears to me and many other people that there's a distinct separation between statistics, where they collect information, and the taking of a census of population. It's clearly separated out throughout the Act here into various sections and is used over and over. And this whole idea of the voluntary surveys is where they get the permission to use every other question that is on the survey. And Section 31 does not apply in respect of a refusal or neglect to furnish the information that they're asking on those voluntary surveys. They also have sharing agreements. This is part of the idea that they're selling the information. You have been noticed, some are on the form, that they are providing information to other departments. That's what this is. They have to inform the respondent that they're going to take your information and share it. And there's all this information about the various agreements that they can enter into in order to sell or share the information with other departments or commercial entities. And presumption, any document or paper written or printed purporting to be a form authorized for use in the taking of a census or the collection of statistics, the taking of a census, or the collection of statistics. See the separation in the or and also the terms taking and collection. All right, so throughout. The other thing is that the information is privileged. It's not private, it's privileged. And private is what the term is used. Private and confidential, the terms are used in the private world. Privileged is the term used when you're talking about the whole fiction concept of like solicitor-client privilege. Once you're into privilege, you're not talking about your basic rights. You're talking about something that's given to you by somebody who claims to be superior to you, some agency that claims to own you or you're subject to. So there's a separation between the idea of your information being private and the information being privileged. So I think that covers it for the Act here. And I encourage you to understand this for yourself. Take a look at the sections, Section 31 and Section 8. Those are the key sections. And decide what you want to do and how you want to do it. I did work with somebody in the past who was prosecuted for the failing to fill out the form completely because they made the mistake of putting their name and phone number on it, as well as the census question only. And then basically they have somebody to charge because you've admitted to being the person who filled out the form by putting your name and contact information on it. And again, because you've provided some voluntary information, but not all the voluntary information, they make the pressure connection. That individual challenged it to a certain point, actually did make some court appearances on it, and then when it came to pre-trial type of stuff, the judge basically encouraged them to try and come to some sort of agreement, and the individual, not wanting to proceed to a trial, went out in the hallway and agreed to provide additional information, and they dropped the charges associated with it. So they use the imprisonment and the fine as an intimidation and a threat, and it does not appear that they have the right to do so if you understand that there's a mandatory portion of the form, because the census is only about population and agriculture. Everything else is voluntary information under the general statistics section, not the population census and agriculture census. Hope that helps, and take care.